Hello, and thanks for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. If you're returning, thanks. It means a lot. Okay, today we're going to dive into an Audi, specifically the 3.0 V6 TFSI supercharged model. It's on a Quattro. This one is specifically a 2016, I believe. Good friend of mine noticed some coolant leaking, and I diagnosed it as the water pump. So we're going to get into removing the water pump here. I think this will probably be the most in-depth video on YouTube to date, because I tried searching myself, because this is the first time for me. So let's get right into it. The first thing you're going to need to do is locate the serpentine belt tensioner for Supercharger, and it's right down there, which is a 16mm bolt. And we'll get the tool here. We'll get it on there, loosen that bolt, and let's pull that supercharger belt off. Okay, we got the supercharger belt off. If you see the tensioner down there, it rotates to the driver's side. If you're standing over the engine bay, it rotates that way. You just pull it off. The next thing you want to do is loosen these. And I'm sorry, I'm using a flashlight. It's getting dark out. On the water pump right there, you want to loosen those 3 bolts. They're triple 10s, I believe. So you want to loosen those before you remove the next belt. Yeah, I got the triple M10 on the water pump screw. You're just going to loosen these and back them out just a little bit and leave them on there. I've got an ultra slim headed wrench. It's another thing I forgot to mention. This car has a service mode, all Audis do, and it removes the front clip, the bumper, the headlights, the shrouds, the intake, and all that stuff. I didn't want to do that. It's kind of really an expensive job, and I'm just trying to save my friend some money. So loosen these ones up. Loosened up down here. We're going to go ahead and take the serpentine belt off, which is the accessory drive belt. And I'll locate the tensioner and show you guys here in a second. But you definitely need these special sockets here. They're like a super 12 point. Let me get this in focus. I think they're called triple 10s or triple hex. It's M14, M10, M9. So that was M9 for the water pump. But yeah, you definitely need these. You need one of these tensioner tools, a slim type of breaker bar, 3/8 1/4-inch drive thing. It's if you don't want to take the front of this car apart. So let me find the tensioner. To get the accessory drive belt off, which is the belt behind the supercharger belt that drives everything else like the alternator and the water pump that's leaking, you have to disconnect these 2 hoses here that run into the supercharger crossover for the coolant. And then there's a T30 right there, and you got to take that off. That goes to the bracket that holds that then 2 hoses up to this crossover. So back out that T30, pull this off, and coolant's going to end up spilling out. Okay, so after you loosen the 2 coolant feed pipes to the top of the supercharger, we're looking at the engine. We're going to go down behind, see we removed that T30, and right down below there is a 16mm bolt. Now I have a really skinny, really long extender ratchet down there with a crow's foot, and it's super hard to get to. You know, that's probably why you gotta put the car in service mode, but again, I'm keeping the bumper, headlights, everything on. So that is gonna push towards the driver's side, so down. We're gonna loosen it and take the belt off. Alright, I'm gonna call it a night, and we're gonna pick up tomorrow with this. But so far we removed the supercharger belt, and that was a 16mm tensioner down there. And then we took a triple square M9 and took the 3 water pump pulley bolts loose, left the pulley on there. We took out a T30 out of this coolant bracket that runs up into the supercharger crossover, pulled it forward, and then got the tensioner that was down there. That was a 16 as well. We used a crow's foot and a long kind of slim breaker. Got the belt off. Now the belt is stuck behind this idler here, so I'm going to leave that for now. I'm just going to leave the belt. Now the belt's going to get changed, but I'm just going to leave that. So we basically removed the supercharger belt, loosened the accessory drive belt, put it aside, and took the water pump pulley off. And you can see, as confirmed, the water pump pulley is leaking. So we got to get this supercharger off now. It's going to be fun. Okay, we got the intake tube out. So they just stuffed a paper towel in there to protect anything. There's a little hose right there that connects on the back side of the intake tube. Be extremely careful when removing it. If this thing snaps, you have to buy a whole new intake tube. It's not cheap on an A7. So yeah, we got that off. Now we're going to start looking at all the lines and the connectors up here. Basically everything's going to be working back here, disconnecting tons of vacuum hoses and everything else. And just got to be really careful with these cars because there's a lot of plastic. On the back of the supercharger, there's a little, I don't know if it's a PCV valve or something. You got to squeeze these two tabs and lift up so you can get this whole hose assembly out of the way here. I tried, and you unplug the whatever electrical connectors are back there. I tried taking this entire bracket off. Two of the screws are hidden in the back. It's super hard. So you're just going to have to disconnect these vacuum lines up here. Make sure you mark them or remember where they go. They're pre-formed, so they should go back to the same spot. But you're just going to disconnect these three up top here. And then the four below it. And you'll have that vacuum manifold block there with all the plugs in it. Just kind of set them off to the side. Okay, we have a total of 4 electrical connectors we're going to take off of the supercharger. One on each side here. And they have little gray tabs that slide up and then push. So you just want to disconnect them, throw them out of the way. Bring this one around to the front. The supercharger has got 2 of them, so 1 and 2 right there. You want to take this hose here, unclip it from the connector and the valve cover right there and up there, and just set it off to the side. You don't gotta move it hard, just set it right there on top of the gray connectors. It's fine. This one's a bit tough. The vacuum hoses, you want to get them so that you can get them away from the supercharger, and they're held onto the composite fuel rail with some nylon clips or something. So be very careful. It's all plastic and composite. It will crack on you, and if it does, I'm sure an Audi fuel rail is not cheap. So just get everything kind of set it off to the side. It'll give you some slack, give you some room. We got all these vacuum lines disconnected, and we're going to start looking to see what else is on here to take off before we pull this supercharger off. Okay, I think I'm at the point where supercharger's almost off. The only thing left, I decided I'm going to leave the fuel rails in the supercharger. They look like they'll come out with the supercharger. I hope they come out with the supercharger. It looks like they will. I'm just going to take those torque spits screws out on each side. There's 4 of them, 2 on each rail. I'm going to disconnect that fuel line. That electronic throttle body was a pain to get off. An absolute pain. So be careful. Mark everything. You see I got paint dots. Make sure all the hoses and plug. I just tucked all the plugs down below. And I think that's the point where we're going to get it off. You know, everything looks like it's out of the way. Just got to get that fuel hose off. A couple of those torque spits. We got the 2 connectors off up front. And then supercharger bolts. I think there's 6 of them. Looks like 6. Hopefully we can lift this thing off. Okay, change number 2. Sorry for the compressor noise in the background. When looking at these fuel rails, because they're composite and because I just don't want any problems with it, I'm not going to take off that fuel line. I did, however, remove the torque spit screws that are on the fuel rail, and I'm going to blow all this out with air, recheck over everything, and kind of pull the fuel rail up with the injectors and see if I can't get them to just shimmy out of the way. Again, I'm trying to do this as careful as possible, the easiest way possible, so we don't have to go replacing unnecessary parts, because these engines are prone to break. Things are just plastic, and Audi, Volkswagen is you know, brittle plastic all the time. BMWs. So hopefully this thing comes off good. Okay, it was pretty ridiculous trying to get this thing up. The supercharger is pretty heavy. You might be able to do it by yourself. I'm not, because I don't want to drop it. But I had to take this manifold bracket off, and these two bolts in the back, they're back behind the throttle plate, and they are tight to get to. Audi does not want you to do this, but we got it off, so I'm gonna get a hand pulling the supercharger off, and then we'll be back. Okay, that was a beast to get up. It's just very awkward, and the studs are long. So it's not too bad to get out. It's just for a regular home mechanic, if you ain't got no special tools, you might as well take it to the dealer. You know, I've been doing this a long time, so I have a lot of specialized tools that I had to use, but supercharger's off. You know, down here's the windage tray. You got access to everything. So I'm gonna plug the ports up here so nothing gets in there, and take a little lunch break. Come back to getting this water pump out now. Okay, we're back. So the next thing I'm gonna remove is probably this water pump, and take out those torque spit screws, get them all out. It's about small victories on this car, because like I said, it's very tedious to get everything off. And then underneath here is the thermostat. So we had catastrophic failure with the water pump, so we will definitely be changing the thermostat, obviously along with new coolant. So let's get this water pump off. Okay, we got the water pump off. There were 8 let me see what this was, T30 bolts, sorry about that, 8 T30 bolts. There it is, the water pump, it's off. It was leaking from the weep hole on the top right there. So let's get the idler pulley off and get that belt out of there, because that belt's got to go, and then we can start cleaning things up down here. Remove the one tensioner there because it was a little sticky and I wanted to clean it. But you don't need to. As you can see, you can get to the water pump. You can probably remove this water pump, honestly, if that was the only thing you were doing without taking out the supercharger. Just be really tight. But I am going to get this crossover tube over now out of the way, because the thermostat is right underneath here. And because it had catastrophic cooling failure, we want to make sure, like I said, we get every part changed. It's a good buddy of mine, so I want to make sure it's right. This plastic shroud here, these two little clips pop out and then kind of just pops out. Take it out. And we'll have to remove this intake snorkel to get to that tube, and all the assemblies there to pop that out. And they're held in with, looks like 2 T30s there and there. And we'll get it out. Okay, we took the 2 T30s out, and this pops right out, and now we have access to the hoses down there to disconnect them and get that water pipe out. This crossover pipe here was a pain to get out. I had to loosen up the upper hose here, and then the actual housing that goes onto the block, as well as the housing on this side, and release the hose. That way I'm able to pull out the crossover pipe. And now we have access to the thermostat. So we'll remove those 5 T30 bolts and pull the thermostat out and order all the parts we need. All right, that completes the teardown video of the Audi A7 3.0 Quattro engine. We removed the water pump, thermostat, supercharger, crossover pipe, various hoses, supercharger belt, the accessory belt, and we got all down here and everything is good. So I'm going to cover everything up and order all the parts. Stay tuned for part 2 of the install. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.